Salli ala nabiyyina salli ala Muhammadin. मैं अल्लाह ताला को हाजिर नाजिर जानकर कहता हूँ कि मैं खिलाफत अहमदिया पर ईमान रखता हूँ और मैं खिलाफत अहमदिया को क़यामत तक जारी रखने के लिए पूरी कोशिश करूंगा और इस्लाम की तबलीग को दुनिया के किनारों तक पहुंचाने के लिए इंतहाई कोशिश करता रहूंगा.
These were the words of Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad as he took an oath that would forever transform his life. He was no longer as other men. He was a man of God. It was the 18th day of December in the year 1928. The day brought news of the first ever train from Amritsar. The mood among the locals of Qadian was festive. Many of the elders of the town had gone to Amritsar to board the train and experience the historic journey. The commencement of the train service would usher a new era for the movement, as more people could now visit Qadian. This town was once home to Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, peace be upon him, who claimed to be the promised Messiah. His son and the second successor of his movement, Hadhrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, was now leading his cause. The day also brought further good news for Hadhrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad and his wife, Hazrat Maryam Siddiqa. It was the birth of their son, Tahir. His mother took every precaution to ensure his good health and upbringing. He grew up as a happy child, ready to play and take any challenge thrown at him. Being the son of the Khalifa, and also the only son of Hazrat Maryam Siddiqa, he occupied a privileged position, but he was never overprotected or spoiled. His mother wanted him to be a doctor or physician, but he was never interested in pursuing such a career.
अब्बा मुझे याद है ये कहा करते थे कि मेरी वालदा की बड़ी ख्वाहिश थी कि डॉक्टर बने मेरा बेटा और गुरबा का मुफ्त इलाज करे.
As a humble child, I started my life in the ordinary schools of Qadian. I was never a very brilliant student, but always I was interested in human affairs, in social works and so on and so forth. So I managed to scrape through in my school education.
At the young age of 16, he had to bear a poignant loss.
His mother died in 1944 when he was appearing in his matriculation examination. During that period, his mother died.
Despite his grief at this difficult time in his life, he continued with his studies. He developed an interest not only in classical Urdu writers, but also Shakespeare, Charles Dickens, Conan Doyle, and other English writers. He started writing poetry. He also developed a deep interest in the study of the Holy Quran and started to memorize it, but soon realized that he was more interested in the meaning of the words. He took studying the Quran intently. He discovered his father's library and started reading books on Darwin's theory of evolution. Although he never had doubts about Islam or the existence of God, he started investigating the possibility of the existence of God on a logical basis.
I have myself researched into this issue because right from my childhood, it has been bothering me in so many ways. And because the religion I believe in is a religion of which I am completely convinced. Those parts of which I was not convinced, I have been praying about them and also making my own investigations so that today as I stand, I can say honestly that I believe in everything which I claim I believe in through conviction, not through dogmatism.
In his biography, he stated that one afternoon he went through an experience which resolved for him forever the question of the existence of God. The experience, he said, could not be looked upon objectively as a potent proof of the existence of God, but he had no doubt that it was God's answer. I was in a state of semi-consciousness. halfway between a dream and reality. I saw the entire earth squeezed into a ball. There was no creation of any sort visible, no life, no cities, nothing, just the earth. Then I saw each particle of the world tremble and burst out into a slogan, "Ah, God!" Each particle was proclaiming the reason for its existence. The whole world was flooded with a strange light, and every atom of the earth began to swell and contract in rhythm. I found myself repeating the words, "Our God." As he returned to full consciousness, he could still see it happening. Although he never had any doubts, this experience affirmed his faith in an unshakable belief in God's existence. The political situation of the subcontinent of India in the 1940s became very fragile. The British monarchy had decided that the subcontinent should be divided into two separate nations, one for Hindus and one for Muslims, and be given independence. Muslims and Hindus had lived for years as neighbors, but at the height of the unrest, without rationale, suddenly hated each other. No one was safe. Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad was now a strong young man and part of the Ahmadiyya youth movement, Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya. He was among many from Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya who formed into companies and battalions for the defense of Qadian. He was appointed as the officer in charge of one of these units. His task was to organize the defense of the center of Qadian. In August 1947, the community faced an unexpected crisis. The entire area had fallen inside the territory allocated to India. His father, the head of the community, ordered the evacuation of Qadian.
At that time, my late father was sent a message by late Mahatma Gandhi, exactly pointing out to him the so-called mistake he was about to commit. My father, then in a sermon, he told Ahmadis in very clear terms what was in store for them. He said, "We are opting for Pakistan, yet I assure you that in Pakistan you will be dealt with so cruelly and you will be deprived of all your rights ultimately, that if I tell you now, you will shudder and the weak among you may have heart failures. But there is no option. Because once we accept, we opt out of the Muslim Ummah, for us physically and politically it may seem to be an easier, more acceptable cause. But to the message of Ahmadiyyat, that will be a deadly poison. So whatever decision was taken with full knowledge of what was to happen.
Leaving 313 Ahmadis behind to look after the property of the community until they could return, the members of the community migrated. In Pakistan, the community established a new centre on a 1,034-acre site near the west bank of the river Chenab. It was called Rabwa. All the sons of Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad had been dedicated to the service of the community, including Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad. He started working in the youth movement, Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, and proved to be a good administrator and an exceptionally hard worker.
When he became a Khadim, he became a Saik and then proceeded through the various responsibilities within the organization of Majlis Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya, culminating in being a Naib Sadr and ultimately Sadr Majlis Khuddam al-Ahmadiyya. At that time it was for the whole world, and he served in that position for many years.
Along with the service to the community, he continued his secular studies at Government College, Lahore.
The Government College Lahore, a very reputable institution in the north of India, particularly in the Punjab, and there I studied for 4 years. I went originally for BSc, Bachelor of Science, but ended up by getting an honorary degree, in bachelor's degree. And again I studied in an Ahmadiyya institution and did my doctorate on comparative religion, particularly in the study of Islam.
By 1954, Rabwa was a town of 45,000 people. In the center of the town, gleaming in white brilliance, stood the elegant Mubarak Mosque.
In March 1954, a young boy, about 19 years of age, he attacked Hadhrat Khalifatul Masih Sani when he finished his leading his Asr prayer in Masjid Mubarak, and he stabbed him on his neck, and the knife entered, the blade entered deep in the body.
Though the wound itself was to heal rapidly, it had a serious effect on his nervous system. His health deteriorated, and he was unable to work his usual long hours. Some 2 years later, he went to seek advice from specialists in London.
Quite a few members of Huzur's family accompanied him. Among Huzur's children was Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, Dr. Mirza Tahir Ahmad, Mirza Mubarak Ahmad Sahib, then Mirza Tahir Ahmad.
After the treatment, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II decided to return to Rabwa, but he left Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, now aged 26, behind in London. Although according to the original plans he was due to return with his father, but his father had other plans for him. In London, he lived in Maida Vale and studied at the University of London. Although he had learnt English at school, it was at the London University where he learned how to express himself better in the language. Whilst in London, he also had the opportunity to travel in Europe and meet a range of people. About his experience in London, he states in his biography, "At the School of Oriental Studies, I had met people from all over the world, from Africa, from Germany and Poland, from all parts of Europe really, and from America and Canada and South America. I believe that was important, that God had decided that was what I should do, even though I did not know it at the time. He had decided that I should meet all these people, and that I should go out and travel in Europe. I think that was His design." He returned to Rabwa in October 1957 and got married in December that year to Hazrat Sayyida Asifa Begum. That very same year, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II appointed him at the office of Waqf-e-Jadid, which looked after the needs of Ahmadis living in rural communities in East and West Pakistan. His new post in the Waqf-e-Jadid put him in direct contact with the small farmers, villagers and shopkeepers, who were one of the great strengths of the community. He was always very caring for the poor and the needy, and this was also apparent in his personal life.
और अब्बा के लिए तो अब्बा की मुझे बहुत वजह से मैं देखती थी कि बहुत ज़्यादा अब्बा में तड़पती, क्योंकि मदरसे में हम लोग तभी छोटे थे, तो मुझे याद है जब हम लोग कभी मीना बाज़ार पे बच्चियां जा रही हैं तो उम्मी को कहा, उम्मी हमें पैसे दे, मैंने मीना बाज़ार है हमारे स्कूल का, तो उम्मी के ने भी दिए नहीं थे या कम दे रही थी, जो भी था। तो अब्बा ने सुन लिया, अब्बा कहते कि मैं देता हूँ, तो 10-10 रुपये दिए थे। उस वक्त 10 रुपये बहुत ज़्यादा लगते थे, तो क्या था, लेकिन एक शर्त है कि तुम लोगों ने साथ अपने साथ किसी गरीब बच्चों को भी साथ कुछ खराब फैलाओगी और ये करोगी। तो शुरू से इतना मतलब ये था कि हर चीज़ में तुम लोगों ने उनका हिस्सा रखना है और मोहब्बत करनी है उनसे। और इसी तरह अब्बा घर में मुलाजमीन के साथ भी बहुत ज़्यादा हुस्न सलूक से रखते रहते थे, कि यहाँ तक कि एक दफ़ा मुझे याद है उम्मी को कह रहे थे कि लोगों को तो मुलाजमीन रखने की मुसीबत होती है कि आते नहीं हैं, हमें निकालने की मुश्किल पड़ जाती है, वो फिर जाते नहीं हैं। इतने अच्छी तरह रखते थे कि वो जाने पे भी नहीं राज़ी होते थे।
There was a special bond between him and people. I don't understand how and why, but it was a special bond. Whoever used to be with him once, he used to get hooked to him.
Wherever he worked very hard. And he always worked and showed his example, but he used to work in the land as he is a peasant, so to show them that he can do whatever he asks them to do, he can do himself also. So he was a great leader and very active and eloquent, and he was a good speaker. He could speak for hours on different topics. Later he started question answer also with non-Ahmadis.
हज़रत खलीफा सालिस भी जब लोग आया करते थे, गैर जमात मौलवी वगैरह भी आते थे, तो हज़रत खलीफा सालिस ज़्यादातर अब्बा के कोई कहते थे कि आप इनसे मजलिस करेंगे.
He led a very disciplined life, serving the cause of the community. He used to start his day very early in the morning and was at his office well before anyone else.
अब्बा का एक तो मैं आपको बताऊं कि ये तो एक तरीका था ना, सुबह नमाज के बाद तहज्जुद और नमाज के बाद अब्बा तलावत करते थे. ये तो मुझे जब से मैंने होश संभाला ये मैंने देखा. उसके बाद फिर अब्बा थोड़ी देर के लिए सोते ज़रूर थे, फिर अब्बा चले जाते थे अपने वक्फ जदीद के दफ्तर. तो दोपहर को आते थे 2:30 साढ़े 3 के दरमियान, और उस वक़्त उनके मुलाजमीन भी अपने क्वार्टरों में जा चुके होते थे. कभी अब्बा ने किसी को नहीं कहा कि मुझे खाना निकाल के दो या गरम करके दो. खाना पड़ा होता था और ख़ुद ही निकाल के बैठ जाते थे. हम लोग तो बच्चे थे तो मुझे याद है कि ऊपर के मेज़ों पे भी चढ़ के बैठ जाते थे. अब्बा के साथ बातें, बेतकल्फ़ी बात थी तो इसलिए सारी बातें करते रहते थे, सवाल जवाब, और अब्बा बड़ी खुशी खुशी से हर बात का जवाब भी दे रहे हैं और साथ साथ खाना भी खा रहे हैं. इतना मोहब्बत का सलूक बंधा हुआ था कि अब्बा की नाराज़गी सबसे बड़ी सज़ा लगती थी. इसलिए ये होता था कि अगर जहाँ ये देखते थे कि अब्बा को किसी बात से तकलीफ़ हो रही है तो हमारे लिए सख्त तकलीफ़ तो और शर्म वाली बात बन जाती थी. तरबियत का मुझे जो सबसे अब्बा का अंदाज़ा अच्छा लगा कि बच्चों से या किसी से भी ऐसी मोहब्बत का सलूक बांध लेते थे कि उसकी वजह से इंसान बहुत सी बातों से बच जाता है.
It is one of the ironies of history that the Ahmadiyya movement, which was instrumental in the creation of Pakistan, was persecuted by the so-called religious scholars or ulema, who had been so violently opposed to its creation. The persecution was politically inspired to divert the attention of the population from real problems that the country was facing. 1953 saw some of the worst rioting against Ahmadi Muslims and the community.
There was a generalized riot in the Punjab. It was supported by the Punjab government, quietly, not officially. So it became out of control, went out of control, and ultimately the first martial law was imposed because of this.
This wave of persecution continued for nearly 20 years, both at institutional and grassroots level.
What you observe today in Pakistan is not just a public wrath turned against Ahmadis.
Yeah.
It is the government legal persecution.
It's the state persecution.
Yes, yes.
In 1965, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II passed away. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, the son of Khalifatul Masih II and the elder brother of Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, was chosen as the third Khalifa. The problems for the community continued in Pakistan. Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad worked under the guidance of the third Khalifa to deal with the problems the community was facing. In 1974, legislation was proposed in the National Assembly of Pakistan declaring that Ahmadis were not Muslims. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih III led a 5-man delegation to the National Assembly, which discussed the proposed legislation. Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad was the youngest member of the delegation, a compliment to his knowledge, sagacity and familiarity with the history and traditions of the community. In 1974, Pakistan's National Assembly declared that Ahmadis were not Muslims.
In 1974, Bhutto committed the mistake of interfering with a religious process for which he was not politically entitled. You see?
Yeah.
And that opened the Pandora's box. After that, nobody could be able to close it.
Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad continued to serve the community with great zeal. From 1979 to 1982, he served as the president of Majlis-e Ansarullah. He also served as director of Fazle-Omar Foundation and patron of the International Ahmadiyya Association of Architects and Engineers. His life took a dramatic turn in 1982. On the 8th of June that year, his brother and the head of the community, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, Khalifatul Masih III, passed away just before midnight.
वो रात बेपनाह थी और मैं गरीब था.
Nearly 100,000 members gathered at the headquarters in Rabwa. In accordance with the constitution of the community's electoral college, a meeting of the college was convened at the Mubarak Mosque in Rabwa to elect the new Khalifa. Under divine guidance, the electoral college elected Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad as the fourth Khalifa. Overwhelmed with emotion, he first took the oath and then the covenant of allegiance.
मैं आज ताहिर के हाथ पर बैठ करके सिलसिला अहमदिया में दाखिल होता हूँ.
Right from the outset of his Khilafat, he served the destitute and the weak. The very first project he launched was the construction of suitable houses for the needy people in Rabwa. A neighborhood in the city was established under this scheme. It was called Buyutul Hamd. Only 1.5 months after becoming Khalifa, Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, Khalifatul Masih IV, travelled to Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland, Holland, Spain, the UK and Australia. He inaugurated the Basharat Mosque in Pedroabad, a town 25 kilometers outside Cordoba. This was the first mosque to be built in Spain in over 750 years.
सबसे पहले इस मौके पर मुझे एक याद सता रही है, उस वजूद की याद जो आज हम में नहीं, जो सबसे ज्यादा इस बात का हकदार था. आज ये जुमा पढ़ाता और आज इस तकरीब का आगाज करता कि वो बेकरार दुआएं जिनकी कबूलियत का फल हम आज खाने लगे हैं.
He addressed several press conferences, wherein he provided erudite interpretation of Islamic teachings. The newly elected Khalifa was on a peaceful mission, a mission to serve humanity. But the political situation in Pakistan became worse than ever before.
The moment I was selected by Allah to lead the Jamaat, Zia did not like this perspective at all. The regime of Zia wanted some political philosophy to support their regime politically and to give them a reason, a justification for remaining in power. So what they said was, they said they are the custodians of Islam. As such, they have to serve certain purposes for the sake of Islam. And as long as those purposes are not served and achieved, they would remain in power. You know, as if they were commissioned by God to do that. So for this, they had to align and implicate mullahs and to utilize and exploit them. And what was the purpose for which they were destined to play a very important role, you know? The purpose was to destroy the foremost enemy of Islam, that is Ahmadiyya community.
It was during Zia's time the persecution against the Ahmadiyya community peaked. Their shops were pillaged and set on fire, and mobs rioted outside their mosques. The discrimination practiced by the Bhutto government was stepped up.
तुम मुसीबतें हम पर इसलिए डाल रहे हो कि हम अपने खुदा से दूर हट जाएं, लेकिन तुम्हारी आयत करदा मुसीबतें हमें और ज्यादा खुदा के करीब कर देती. हम अपने रब की तरफ और तेजी के साथ लौट जाते हैं.
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV urged restraint on his followers. Do not respond to these provocations. He denounced in sermon after sermon the injustices that Zia was inflicting. God would punish him if he continued in his evil ways. God's wrath would be terrible. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih warned him again and again, but the general paid no attention to the warnings and continued to plot schemes in order to destroy the community.
You know, when I suspected that something is cooking against Ahmadiyyat between the mullahs and the then dictator of Pakistan, Ziaul Haq, Instead of running away, I went straight to Islamabad and camped there for 7 days.
He had many friends among the diplomatic community. Some he met at their offices, and some privately. From the meetings, he gathered something was going to happen, but no one seemed to know exactly what.
Until the Deputy Commissioner of Islamabad sent me a very urgent message. This Deputy Commissioner said, my earnest advice to you is, for God's sake, return immediately to Rabwa, or it will be too late.
Hazrat Khalifa Masih IV immediately returned to Rabwa. On the 26th of April 1984, Ordinance 20 was introduced under martial law by General Ziaul Haq. The ordinance was designed to prohibit Ahmadis from practicing their faith.
I immediately called a meeting of all the Ahmadi elders, whoever were available at the time, to reach Rabwa immediately. I stated before them the facts, the consequences of this ordinance. I told them that according to this ordinance, if I remain in Pakistan and declare myself to be a Muslim, immediately they would arrest me and put me behind the bar. So how can I remain a Khalifa of Jamaatul Ahmadiyya, Khalifatul Masih, and operative at the same time?
The advice at the meeting was unanimous. Huzur should leave Pakistan immediately. At that time, Usman Chu, a missionary of the community who had no idea of what was being planned, saw a dream.
मैंने 27 अप्रैल 1986 की सुबह का वक्त ख्वाब मैं ये देखा कि हुजूर इस्लामाबाद जाने वाले हैं और एक मिनी पास में जाएंगे जिसके इर्द गिर्द हुजूर के पहरेदार मौजूद हैं और जो सब के सब आसमानी रंग की यूनिफॉर्म पहनती हैं और इन पहरेदारों के इर्द गिर्द सरकारी पुलिस हैं। जब मैं इस पास के करीब आ गया, जब मैं इस पास के करीब गया तो मैंने हुजूर को नहीं दिखा और ये समझा कि हुजूर तो ऐब के तरीक़ इस्लामाबाद तशरीफ़ ली गए हैं और पास के अंदर तो सिर्फ कुछ सामान मौजूद हैं। फिर मैंने उसी पास में हुजूर की अलविदा कहने के लिए बैठ गया और पहरेदारों के साथ सफ़र करने लगा। कुछ सफ़र करके उधर किया और पहरेदारों ने मुझे कुछ फाल दिया। इस ख्वाब से मैं समझता हूँ चंद बातें जो मैंने हुजूर खिदमत में पेश भी की थी। नंबर 1 ये है कि अल्लाह ताला जमात हुजूर हिफाजत फरमाएगा। नंबर 2 हुजूर सब के सब इनाम भी फरमाएगा और सब के सब नहायत ज़्यादा तरक्की भी देंगे इंशाअल्लाह ताला।
Unbelievable. That reassured me. I knew that with the grace of Allah, it's Allah's hand. He already has told us and forewarned us.
It was decided that Hazur would leave Pakistan by KLM. A messenger was sent to Karachi to do the booking instead of booking by telephone, that could be tapped.
It was decided that I would leave on Sunday morning by car, and then we reached at about 10:30, reached Karachi. And after eating food and just a little rest, we left for the airport because the plane, I remember, left at 12:30. Now, they told me to come late. Said there's no need for you to come early. They said exactly 5 minutes from the time of the departure of the plane, we will send our special car.
Everything seemed to be all right, and the manager assured that the flight would leave in time.
And the car came exactly 5 minutes before 12:30, and it was sent back.
The airport authorities, they stopped the flight from going on the scheduled time.
The order that the fourth head of the Ahmadiyya community is not permitted to leave the country from any borders was signed by Zia himself. Ziaul Haq lived most of his time during the time of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis, the third caliph. So what he dictated was, and this is written on that prohibition letter, that Mirza Nasir Ahmed, the fourth head of the Ahmadiyya community, fourth head, is not permitted to leave the country from any borders. They had a dilemma. They could not stop Mirza Tahir Ahmad from going on. And they did not know much intricacies about the fourth and third caliphate, So they must have started ringing the intelligence chief of the intelligence bureau in Islamabad and trying to get clearance from him or instructions that this is the case. That is why this was delayed. So at 1:30, we left. The plane, of course, went to Geneva and from there on to Holland. And there we had to wait for a while. Then we came to London.
Around midday, Huzur arrived at Heathrow Airport. And by the grace of Allah, we had made all the arrangements, no problem, no difficulty. And the staff of the KLM on which the airline on which Huzur travelled, they were also available to receive Huzur.
Once in London, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih could carry on his duties as the Khalifa. He, however, had to establish London as the new headquarters of the community.
He had a knack of making everybody feel extremely special. You know, whatever he wanted someone to do, he made them feel that they were capable of doing whatever that was.
He would find out what type of worker is he, and he would accordingly allot him the tasks. And he was very clear in his mind. He wanted the job to be done to the exact manner what he wanted to. And when that work is done, then he will praise him like anything.
और हौसला अफजाई की तो इंतहा थी. छोटा सा किसी ने काम किया तो उस पर इस तरह दाद देते थे कि आदमी शर्मिंदा होता था कि ये तो मैंने तो कुछ भी नहीं किया. और उसके नतीजे में फिर इंसान को एक और ताकत मिलती थी. वो मैं समझता हूँ कि असल में खलीफतुल मसीह की दुआ और रूहानी तवज्जो और हौसला अफजाई के नतीजे में एक ताकत मिलती थी. और वो जो उसने छोटा सा काम किया उससे कई गुना कर जाता था अगली दफ़ा. उस पर जब हौसला अफजाई उसे मिलती थी और दुआ और तवज्जो और शफ़क़त, तो उससे फिर और आगे बढ़ता था.
And I think people just couldn't do enough. They were trying their best to fulfill whatever was the need of the moment.
Hazrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad was a visionary. He foresaw the progress of the community and the need for workers in every sphere of life in the coming decades.
You know, this Waqf-e-Nau scheme, he started on 3rd April 1987, and I'm surprised because in 1984 he left Pakistan in very difficult conditions. You know, there was law against us, so he had to leave Pakistan. But within 3 years, he realized that Jamaat is now going to expand in much bigger scope. So for that he instructed Jamaat's the parents that they should offer their children even before the birth and then train them accordingly so they become good वाक़फ़ीन ज़िंदगी.
हर मुल्क से जब वक्फ होंगे बच्चे तो उस मुल्क की ज़बान को भी समझते होंगे, उस मुल्क مزاج کو بھی سمجھتے ہوں گے. جب اس ملک میں یہ بچے وقت کر کے بڑے ہوں گے اور کام کرنا شروع کریں گے تو یہ بہت اچھا کام کر سکتے ہیں. اور یہ بجائے اس کے کہ ایک جگہ سے وقف ہو کے نکلیں, یہ ساری دنیا میں تنظیم کی طور پر اس طرح پھیل جائے.
Once the new setup in London was established, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV was able to lead the community freely. However, back in Pakistan, Zia's persecution continued. Huzur's warnings grew stronger and stronger. Night after night, month after month, he prayed to God for help for his beleaguered people. He warned Zia in his sermon on the 3rd of June 1988.
اور پاکستان کے بدنصیب سربراہ نے جو پہلے ڈکٹیٹر کے طور پر ظاہر ہوئے, پھر اس کے بعد صدر کا چولہ پہنا, وہ اس وقت حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ السلام کی تکذیب کے سب سے بڑے علمبردار ہیں, اور ان کے تمام ماننے والوں کو بھی, اور ان کو بھی جو تکذیب میں پیش ہیں اور حکومت پاکستان سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, اور ان کو بھی جو تکذیب میں پیش ہیں اور علماء کے طبقے سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, ان کو بھی جو تکذیب میں پیش ہیں اور عدلیہ سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, ان کو بھی جو تکذیب میں پیش ہیں اور سیاست سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, ان کو بھی جو تکذیب میں پیش ہیں اور عوام سے تعلق رکھتے ہیں, لیکن کچھ گروہوں کے سربراہ ہیں, ان سب کو میں مخاطب کر کے تمام جماعت احمدیہ کی طرف سے مباہلے کا چیلنج دیتا ہوں. اگر تم مباہلے کے لیے تیار ہو تو میں جماعت احمدیہ کی سربراہی میں اعلان کرتا ہوں کہ لعنت اللہ علی الکاذبین, تم بھی اپنے چیلوں چانٹوں کو اکٹھا کرو, اپنے بڑوں اور چھوٹوں کو بلاؤ, اپنی عورتوں اور بچوں کو بلاؤ, اور یہ اعلان جماعت احمدیہ کے مدد مقابل کرنے کے لیے.
The challenge of Mubaila had been issued, but despite the warnings, Zia did not mend his ways.
حکومت کا جہاں تک تعلق ہے وہ معصوم احمدیوں پر قانونی حربے استعمال کر کے طرح طرح کے ستم ڈھا رہی ہے. اور آپ کو یاد ہوگا کہ میں نے آغاز ہی میں حکومت کو یہ بھی متنبہ کیا تھا کہ آپ اگر اپنی شان کے خلاف بھی سمجھتے ہوں چیلنج کو قبول کرنا, اگر آپ زیادتیوں سے باز نہ آئے اور ظلم و ستم کی یہ راہ نہ چھوڑی, تو جہاں تک میں سمجھتا ہوں خدا کی تقدیر اسے مباہلے کے چیلنج قبول کرنے کے مترادف بنائے گی, اور آپ سزا سے بچ نہیں سکیں گے.
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV saw a dream which contained a message from God.
I saw in a dream that I was translating a portion of Hadhrat Masih Maud, the founder of the Ahmadiyya community's writings. The history repeats itself, but not the way you think it repeats. It repeats itself in a different way. And when I said this, there were some Englishmen sitting around me, and they said that you are not making the correct translation. The history repeats itself, as we understand, is a different concept. But there are certain things which in essence always repeat, and nobody can change the course of this history. Those who clash with God or His messengers, they are always destroyed. That is how history repeats itself, not like you understand. And in the morning, when I got up, then I knew it was a message about Zia.
On Friday, the 12th of August, under divine guidance, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV declared there was no way back for Zia.
اس کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ جس قوم کو ہم مخاطب کر رہے ہیں آج, جس کو ہم نے مباہلے کی دعوت دی ہے, بدقسمتی سے ان کے مقدر میں خدا تعالیٰ کی ناراضگی کا دن دیکھنا ہے. ورنہ اللہ تعالیٰ اس رنگ میں مجھے یہ پیغام نہ دیتا کہ ہسٹری ریپیٹس اٹ سیلف, اس میں کوئی تبدیلی نہیں دیکھو گے, مجرموں کو خدا ضرور سزا دے گا.
جماعت احمدیہ تو خدا تعالیٰ کے فضل سے ایک والی رکھتی ہے، ایک ولی رکھتی ہے. جماعت احمدیہ کا ایک مولا ہے اور زمین و آسمان کا خدا ہمارا مولا ہے. لیکن میں تمہیں بتاتا ہوں کہ تمہارا کوئی مولا نہیں. خدا کی قسم جب ہمارا مولا ہماری مدد کو آئے گا تو کوئی تمہاری مدد نہیں کر سکے. خدا کی تقدیر جب تمہیں ٹکڑے ٹکڑے کرے گی تو تمہارے نام و نشان مٹا دیے جائیں گے اور ہمیشہ دنیا تمہیں ذلت اور رسوائی کے ساتھ یاد کرے گی.
On the 17th of August, the C-130 Hercules transport plane carrying General Zia-ul-Haq was blown out of the sky. All 31 people on board died. The team investigating the crash eliminated one by one various possible reasons for the crash. How this had happened, the investigators were unable to say. Why it had happened, the whole world knew.
میں نے ضیاء کے متعلق اپنے نظم میں کہا تھا کہ کل چلی تھی جو لیکھوں پہ تیغ دعا، آج بھی اذن ہوگا تو چل جائے گی. بس خدا کی قسم وہ تیغ دعا چل چکی ہے، اب اسے کاٹ کر دکھاؤ، اسے رد کر کے دکھا دو، تب میں مانوں.
The 23rd of March 1989 marked 100 years of the Ahmadiyya community. Grand ceremonies took place in almost 100 countries, with special programs held in the headquarters in London to celebrate this momentous day. From a humble beginning in Qadian to establishing communities in 120 countries, the last 100 years saw the community grow from strength to strength. 1991 was yet another special year for Ahmadis. They had just celebrated 100 years of the community's success through divine help. This year was going to mark 100 years since the start of the community's annual conference. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV decided to attend the 100th annual conference himself.
India is fine. I've been looking forward to visiting India for a long, long time now.
It was an emotional journey, as this was the first time since the partition he was going back to the town where the community had started. It was this very town where he was born and spent his childhood.
ایک اپنا بھی تو گھر تھا، جیسے سندر تھی وہ بستی ویسا وہ گھر بھی سندر تھا.
بڑا مزہ آ رہا ہے. ہم بھی، میں اور میرے بچے اس طرح اسی ایکسائٹ ہو گئے سی. میری بچیاں پہلی دفعہ آئی نے تے وہ بھی کہندیاں نے ہن سانوں پتہ لگا تسی کیڑے مزے اڑا بیٹھے ہو. کہتے آنا خود ایک زندگی دا مزہ ہے جو اتھے دی فضا ہے. دوسرے دیکھو نا اتھے جماعت دے بانی پیدا ہوئے، انہوں نے اس ہوا بھی ساہ لیتے، انہاں گلیاں وچ پھرے، انہاں مکاناں وچ اسی رہ رہے ہاں. اے جذباتی تعلق اتنا گہرا ہے کہ ایک مذہبی آدمی ہی انہوں محسوس پوری طرح کر سکتا ہے. لیکن اے صرف مذہبی تعلق نہیں، گہرا انسانی رشتہ ہے. اور کیونکہ انہوں نے تعلق سارے ارد گرد انسان ہندو بازار نال ہے، اتنے ملاوا مل دے نال انہوں نے تعلقات، اور سکھاں دے نال تعلقات، وہ سارے تعلق والے امٹ کے پے نے. اور ہر ایک دسدا ہے کہ اسی بھی تواڈے واقف، تواڈے پیاریاں وچوں، تواڈے واقفاں وچوں ہیں. سارا ماحول لگتا ہے کہ جس طرح اپنے محبت کرنے والوں کا ماحول ہے، پیار والوں کا ماحول ہے. بڑے لطف آ رہے ہیں. بہت خوشی مل کے کانفرنس ساڈے واسطے بہت زیادہ اہمیت رکھتی ہے اس لحاظ نال کہ 100 سال دے وچ ایک دفعہ ہی آنا ہے نا 100 سال کا جلسہ. لیکن اس جلسے وچ نال یہ گل شامل ہو گئی کہ جدوں دی تقسیم ہوئی ہے، ہند پارٹیشن ہوئی ہے، ادو بعد کوئی خلیفہ کدی اتنے نہیں آیا. اور پہلی دفعہ اللہ تعالیٰ نے منو ہمت دیتی، فیصلہ کرن دی توفیق عطا فرمائی.
Thousands of Ahmadis from all over the world converged upon Qadian. Huzur addressed the annual conference.
سب حاضرین جلسہ کو اور ان سب کو بھی جو اس سعید بخت جلسہ میں شمولیت سے محروم رہے ہیں، میں حضرت اقدس مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کے الہام کی زبان میں مبارک 100 مبارک پیش کرتا ہوں. آج کا یہ تاریخی جلسہ کئی لحاظ سے منفرد ہے اور یکتا ہے.
ایسا جلسہ ایک ہی دفعہ آنا تھا اور ایک ہی دفعہ آیا ہے. اللہ تعالیٰ کا بے انتہا احسان ہے کہ اس نے آج ہمیں اس میں شمولیت کی سعادت بخشی ہے.
Shortly after returning from Qadian, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV had to bear a great loss.
نہ وہ تم بدلے نہ ہم طور
آج جمعے کا مبارک دن ہے. 29 رمضان ہے. الوداعی جمعہ کہلاتا ہے, جمعۃ الوداع. اس جمعے کے آغاز ہی میں, یعنی جب سورج ڈھل گیا جمعرات کا اور اسلامی نقطۂ نگاہ سے جمعے کی رات شروع ہو گئی, اور جب انگریزی نقطۂ نگاہ سے بھی رات کے 12 بجے اور 1-2 منٹ اوپر ہوئے, اس وقت میری بیوی کو اپنے رب کا بلاوا آ گیا.
فاصلے بڑھ گئے پر قرب تو سارے ہیں وہی. نہ وہ تم بدلے نہ ہم طور ہمارے ہیں وہی.
Hazur at that time was, of course for him it was a very emotional moment, naturally for anyone in that situation. But the fortitude that he bore and how he bore this loss, both for his sake and for the sake of his family, it was quite, it was more emotionally rendering, I think, for the community at that time, because Hazur was very stoic in the face of this loss, and he bore it with great fortitude. And it was during, I think, again, it was visible to see at the Namaz Janaza prayers of Hazrat Sayyidah Asma Begum Sahib.
یہ تیرے کام ہے مولا, مجھے دے صبر و ثبات.
I think around that time perhaps it was Eid as well, and his other Jamaat commitments. I think for us, especially from a perspective of the Jamaat and those who are involved in the administration, for us it was again a lesson that as Allah wills, so be it, but the cause of the Jamaat, the furthest of the Jamaat doesn't really stop.
طور ہمارے ہیں وہی.
The 24th of March 1989 was a special day. It was the first Friday after the centenary of the community, and Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV delivered his sermon.
آج جو آپ میرے ساتھ خطبہ جمعہ پڑھ رہے ہیں, خطبہ سن رہے ہیں یا جمعہ پڑھ رہے ہیں, آپ کو میں یہ اطلاع, خوشکن اطلاع بھی دیتا ہوں کہ اس وقت اس آواز کو موریشس کے احمدی بھی سن رہے ہیں اور جرمنی کے احمدی بھی سن رہے ہیں. یہ وہ صدی کا پہلا خطبہ ہے جس کو آسمانی رسل و رسائل کے ذریعے سے, جس کو سیٹلائٹ ہک اپ کہتے ہیں, سب سے پہلے موریشس کی جماعت نے سننے کا انتظام کیا, اور اب مجھے اطلاع ملی ہے کہ جرمنی کی جماعت نے بھی اس خطبے کو براہ راست سننے کا انتظام کیا ہوا ہے.
That further developed and it progressed into a way whereby 24 countries joined that group of countries who were listening to his Friday sermon through the telephone. In 1991, Huzur graced the Jalsa Salana of Qadian Darul Aman. On that historic occasion, the addresses of Huzur Rahimullah were relayed throughout the globe via satellite telephone link.
This laid foundations for a new form of communication and reached a new height on the 31st of January 1992.
आज का दिन अहमदियत की तारीख़ में एक बहुत ही मुबारक दिन है। ये जुमा जमात की दूसरी सदी की तारीख़ के आगाज़ में एक बहुत ही अजीम संग मील नस्ब कर रहा है और जमात को जमा होने के एक नए दौर में दाखिल कर रहा है। बनी नौ इंसान की तारीख़ में पहली मरतबा हज़रत मसीह मऊद अलैहिस्सलाम के इस आजिज़ ग़ुलाम और खलीफतुल मसीह को ये तौफ़ीक़ मिली है कि ऐसा खुतबा दे रहा है, ऐसा जुमा पढ़ा रहा है जो एक बहुत ही ताकतवर बर्रे आज़म के एक किनारे से दूसरे किनारे तक सौती लिहाज से भी पहुँच रहा है और तस्वीरी लिहाज से भी पहुँच रहा है।
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV's vision to lead the community to new heights manifested itself in the creation of a TV channel that would connect the community to their beloved leader. Initially, his Friday sermons were transmitted in Europe only, but on the 21st of August 1992, the transmission started spanning 4 continents. Through the blessings of this new medium, the barriers of distance were broken, and the community came together at the hand of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV at the annual conference in 1993.
आज जो वाक़या आप देखने वाले हैं, मैंने पहले भी कहा था कि जब से ज़मीन और आसमान बने हैं कभी किसी आँख ने ये बात नहीं देखी कि बैक वक्त दुनिया के तमाम बड़े आज़मों से बकसरत ममालिक और कौमें मुख्तलिफ ज़ुबानों में एक शख्स के हाथ पर बैत कर रहे हों और वो शख्स हज़रत मोहम्मद मुस्तफ़ा सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम के एक ग़ुलाम का अदना ग़ुलाम हो। आज मैं आपसे अहद बैत लेता हूँ, हाथ बढ़ाइए। अशहदु अल्लाह इलाहा
that the international bath took place during the Jalsa. That event actually was telecast live throughout the globe, and that's how this concept of Huzur Rahimahullah was actually materialized, and that was, I think, the milestone, that was the turning point from where Huzur wanted to progress forward, carry that momentum forward.
This momentum took MTA to a new level, and on the 7th of January 1994, MTA started its daily transmission from its Earth station in London.
अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कि आज वो जुमा का दिन आया जिसकी बहुत देर से दिल में तमन्ना थी और एक मुद्दत से इंतज़ार था कि आज खुदा के फजल के साथ इंटरनेशनल अहमदिया मुस्लिम टेलीविज़न का बाकायदा आगाज़ हो रहा है। वो जो जुमा का खुतबा पहले हर जुमे सुनाया जाता था वो अगरचे इसी टेलीविज़न के ज़रिए था, लेकिन एक रोज़मर्रा की सर्विस के तौर पर अभी ये जारी नहीं हुई थी। बस अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कि जो खुशखबरी मैंने मॉरिशस की सरज़मीन से दी थी, आज इंग्लिस्तान की सरज़मीन से ये ऐलान करने की तौफ़ीक़ मिल रही है कि आज से बाकायदा मुस्लिम टेलीविज़न अहमदिया की रोज़ाना सर्विस का आगाज़ हो चुका है।
Huzur Rahimahullah, I think I could always feel that whatever we talked about, whether it was about the commercial side of the contracts, the satellite contracts, very complex satellite contracts, whether it was about the technological aspects of the television, of the broadcast industry, of the satellite transmissions, I always found that he was one step ahead. I don't know how. To even this day, I don't know. But he was.
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV maintained a deep interest in the administration and the overall supervision of MTA. Under his guidance, The channel progressed rapidly, starting its 24-hour service across the globe on the 1st of April 1996. He personally initiated new programs and participated in countless broadcasts, ranging from lectures, sermons, question and answer sessions, to teaching the Holy Quran and homeopathy. Catering for a variety of languages for young and old, he ensured that MTA sought to provide an education and training medium unrivaled in history. He used to love children and would sit among them and tell them stories, and at the same time teach them some very important lessons in life. His charismatic personality graced the screens of millions. Suddenly the boundaries were shrunk, and his message could reach them no matter where in the world they were.
یہ عجیب دور آ گیا ہے، لمحہ لمحہ کی خبر ہر جگہ پہنچ رہی ہے. جماعت احمدیہ کی عالمی برادری ایک خاندان بن گئی ہے. ایک ہاتھ پر اکٹھے ہو کر ایسے اتحاد کا نظارہ کبھی پہلے کسی نے نہیں دیکھا تھا. کیا؟ ہاں جرمنی والے کہتے ہیں، ہم بھی جرمنی تو یہاں بیٹھا ہوا اکثر. ماشاءاللہ زمبابوے سے بھی، سوچیں ذرا، کہاں زمبابوے کہاں یہ دنیا اللہ کے فضل سے. جاپان سے آ گیا ہے. قادیاں والے بھی بول رہے ہیں کہ نہیں ابھی تک؟ اچھا، اللہ اکبر. جماعت ہائے احمدیہ عرب زندہ باد. جماعت احمدیہ عجمان و شارجہ زندہ باد. گیمبیا سے بھی ماشاءاللہ. دیکھیں کہاں کہاں سے آج عالمی رابطہ ہے، اکٹھے بیٹھے ہوئے. برادری کتنی عظیم ہے. یہ کبھی دنیا میں ایسا واقعہ ہوا ہے؟ کبھی ہوا ہے یہ واقعہ؟ کہ مسیح موعود کی دعائیں ہیں جو عرش پر سنی گئی. محمد مصطفیٰ کا اعجاز ہے جو آج ظاہر ہو رہا ہے.
Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV was an internationally acclaimed thinker and scholar of comparative religion. He was a prolific writer and author of many scholarly works. In his books, he dealt with social, political and moral issues facing the world. Some of his books include Murder in the Name of Allah, Gulf Crisis and the New World Order, Universal and Moral Values, Politics and World Peace, Islam's Response to Contemporary Issues, An Elementary Study of Islam, Christianity, A Journey from Facts to Fiction, Absolute Justice, Kindness and Kinship. His masterpiece was Revelation, Rationality, Knowledge and Truth. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV was a great poet. His collection of Urdu poetry, Hadhrat Tahir, was also published during his lifetime. He had a profound understanding of religious scriptures. He delivered lectures and held classes to teach the meaning of the Holy Quran. For the benefit of mankind, he also translated the Holy Quran in a fluent, simple and easy-to-understand form. His question and answer sessions were a testament to his knowledge. He was asked all kinds of questions on all kinds of subjects. Whether it was science or religion, moral or social issues, he was never short of a reply.
ابا مجھے یاد ہے یہ کہا کرتے تھے کہ میری والدہ کی بڑی خواہش تھی کہ ڈاکٹر بنے میرا بیٹا اور غربا کا مفت علاج کرے. اور کہتے میں ڈاکٹر ایلوپیتھک ڈاکٹر تو نہیں بن سکا، لیکن ہومیوپیتھک کی اللہ تعالیٰ نے توفیق دی. اور اس میں یہ بھی ہوا کہ بہت بڑھ کے غربا کا بھی علاج کیا اپنے.
His interest in homeopathy developed with an incident in his early 20s when he used to suffer from migraine.
مجھے ایک سر درد کی تکلیف ہوتی تھی جو میگرین کہلاتی ہے. اس لیے پھر میں نے حضرت مسلم موعود کی طرف رجوع کیا. آپ کے پاس ایک دوائی تھی سینڈول جو کلکتے سے آیا کرتی تھی. ایک دفعہ چھوٹی سیدہ میرا پاکو میں نے لیٹا ہوا تھا، کافی تکلیف تھی، آنکھ کھولنی بھی مشکل تھی. تو گرمیوں کی شام تھی. میں نے کہا آپ ابا جان سے جا کے میرے لیے سینڈول لے آئیں. تو کچھ دیر کے بعد واپس آئیں تو انہوں نے کہا کہ وہ سینڈول تو ختم ہو چکی ہے. تو انہوں نے فرمایا ہے کہ میں ہومیوپیتھک دوائی دیتا ہوں، یہ استعمال کر کے دیکھ لو. اس وقت تک مجھے کوئی خاص یقین نہیں تھا ہومیوپیتھی پہ. تبرکاً میں نے کہا ٹھیک ہے. वो दवाई मुंह में मेरे पुड़िया मुंह खोल दिया, आंखें बंद उसी तरह, और पुड़िया मुंह में डाल दी मीठी गोलियों की, और कुछ देर बातें 2-3 मिनट बातें की, क्या मैं जानने लगी हूँ कुछ फ़र्क पड़ा? तो अचानक मुझे महसूस हुआ कि दर्द है ही नहीं, यानी होने और ना होने के दरमियान जो नो मैन्स लैंड है वो भी नहीं थी। तो उससे मुझे यकीन हो गया कि ये कोई जादू टोन का नहीं है, ना महज तबर्रक, बल्कि इसमें कुछ हकीकत है, कोई खुदा ताला ने निज़ाम जारी फरमाया हुआ है। फिर मैंने हज़रत मुस्लिम मौद की लाइब्रेरी से, वहाँ बहुत किताबें थीं, बड़ा ज़ख़ीरा था, जाकर वहाँ से तबीयत पूछने जाया करते थे हम, आमतौर पर मगरिब के बाद जाया करते थे। तो तबीयत पूछ के फिर मैं लाइब्रेरी में चला जाता था, फिर वहाँ से उठानी भी शुरू कर दी और घर ले आता था और बाद सारी रात पढ़ता रहा। तो बहुत लंबा अरसा मैंने शनासाई हासिल की है और अभी इलाज नहीं शुरू किया, बल्कि किताबों पर किताबें पढ़ी, उनको दवाओं के मिजाज को अपने ज़हन में उनका नक्श जमाया, फिर रफ्ता रफ्ता इसकी प्रैक्टिस शुरू की।
और मुझे याद है जब अब्बा ने शुरू की है होम्योपैथिक, तो हम तो बहुत छोटे छोटे थे, तो घर में एक छोटी सी अलमारी होती थी पिछले कमरे में, उधर बीमार आके बैठते थे, गाँव से मुख्तलिफ जगहों से आ रहे होते थे, और कुछ जब ज़्यादा होना शुरू हो गया तो बाहर भी बैठा करते थे। फिर जब काफ़ी ज़्यादा बढ़ गए तो फिर अब्बा ने ये, पहले तो पप्पी में अभी सिंध हुआ करती थी मेरी पप्पी, उनके घर ले गए थे, फिर वहाँ भी जब नहीं संभाल सके तो फिर अपने वक्फ जदीद के दफ्तर में ले गए थे और उधर बात करते रहते।
Despite his busy schedule after becoming Khalifa, he continued to practice homeopathy.
बावजूद दीगर तमाम मसरूफियात के रोज़ाना खतूत में सैकड़ों लोग, मुसलमान, गैर मुस्लिम, अहमदी, गैर अहमदी, उनके खतूत आते थे अपनी अमराज के लिए, वो इलाज मांगते थे, हुजूर की तरफ से उनको दवाइयाँ बताई जाती थी। और सफ़रों में भी हुजूर का ये तरीक़ था कि लोग आते थे, जिसको भी पता चलता कि आप होम्योपैथी के ज़रिए भी इलाज फरमाते हैं, हिंदू, सिख, ईसाई, ला मज़हब, हर किस्म के लोग वो आते और आपसे होम्योपैथी जो है तरीक़ा इलाज हासिल करते और उसके नतीजे में शिफा पाते थे।
He took weekly classes to teach homeopathy and made every effort to make this form of treatment common. His lectures were compiled as a book and were published under the title Homeopathy, Like Cures Like. He was a great humanitarian. Welfare of the weak and underprivileged was always very close to his heart. Under his guidance, homeopathic clinics were established, in addition to the large numbers of hospitals and schools open to serve the poor in the most needy countries of the world. He also established an organization called Humanity First. The main purpose of this organization was to alleviate human suffering. Physicians, teachers, engineers and professionals from all walks of life belonging to the community volunteered their time to help the deprived by providing basic medical and educational needs. Special envoys were sent in war-torn and disaster-struck countries to provide urgent medical help and relief.
If you believe in Creator, you must also believe in His creation. If you love the artist, you must also love his art. As such, our concept of Islam is so beautiful and so well poised that it has started attracting attention all over the world. People from the north, from the south, from the west, from the east, all over the world joining Ahmadiyyat at a greater speed, which is now turning into not a speed but acceleration. And if you go to Africa, if you go travel to Southeast Asia, small islands like Tuvalu, etc., everywhere you will find more number of people joining Ahmadiyyat and finding peace, finding a singleness of human character which is missing elsewhere.
Biggie
The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a truly global community. Under the dynamic leadership of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV, the community continued to spread throughout the world. Right from the beginning of his Khilafat, he regularly traveled to European countries, including Germany, Holland, Belgium, France, Switzerland, Italy, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and Portugal. His visits enhanced the missionary efforts and rejuvenated these communities. In the Far East, he toured Singapore, Fiji, Australia, Japan, and Sri Lanka to meet members of the community and to make an appraisal of the opportunities for further progress. He took the message of peace to the people of Africa and toured Gambia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, the Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Nigeria in 1988. This highly successful tour of 6 countries spanned over 5 weeks. During his tour, he met heads of state, ministers, parliamentarians, and paramount chiefs. The members of the community were overjoyed to meet the Khalifa. He breathed new life into the community, and many came into the fold of Ahmadiyyat. He continued the missionary efforts to Mauritius and East Africa, where he toured Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. The South American countries of Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Guatemala, and Guyana were also blessed with his visits. Community members in these countries had the opportunity of meeting with his exalted personage and benefiting from his sublime discourses. The Ahmadiyya communities all around the world hold annual conventions to bring the community together. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV regularly graced and addressed these conventions during his visits. Among the many countries he regularly toured, the USA and Canada were fortunate to have their annual conventions blessed with his faith-inspiring addresses. During his visits, he also inaugurated new mosques in both Canada and the USA. After Huzur's migration, he graced the annual conventions held in the United Kingdom, and due to the headquarters being moved to London, they became an international gathering. Among the other European communities, in particular, the annual conventions in Germany were frequently graced by his presence. In July 2000, Huzur visited Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world. During the visit, Huzur met the President of Indonesia. He also addressed the community's annual convention of Indonesia, which attracted a large crowd. All these tours by Huzur strengthened and uplifted the spirituality and created awakening among the Ahmadi masses. Through his efforts, the community grew year after year. More and more people joined the fold of Ahmadiyyat, and many new missions were established throughout the world.
आपकी शख्सियत के बहुत से पहलू थे और हर पहलू ही हसीन था। आपका इल्म फजल, आपकी खुश मिजाजी, खुश अखलाकी, हमदर्दी, अल्फाज में तो उसको समेटा नहीं जा सकता।
अब्बा की मोहब्बत भी और ताल्लुक़ भी और दोस्ती भी गुरबा से भी थी, उमरा से भी थी, बच्चों से भी थी, बड़ों से भी थी, बूढ़ों से भी थी और जाहिलों से भी थी और उनसे अनपढ़ लोगों से भी और बहुत आलम फाजिल लोगों से भी। मुझे लगता है अब्बा को कभी भी किसी से मोहब्बत करने में कोशिश नहीं करनी पड़ी। ये फितरत थी और इसका इजहार भी बहुत खुल के किया करते थे, तो इसलिए वो लोगों को चेक भी ज़्यादा करता था, क्योंकि जो आपके दिल से उभर रही हो चीज़ वो ज़ाहिर है ज़्यादा चेक करती है।
गैर उनकी इसलिए वो ज़्यादा प्यार करते थे क्योंकि ये दूर से आए हैं, उनकी तरबियत करना है, हाँ जी, उनको समझाना है, इसलिए बहुत प्यार करते थे। अगर मैं समझ जाता हूँ वो मेरे साथ आज प्यार करते हैं, हालांकि सिर्फ मेरे साथ प्यार नहीं करते पर सारे गैर से प्यार करते हैं।
Huzur loved children greatly. He would even stop for them, pick them up, cuddle them, give them sweets, make them feel as if they were Huzur's own children.
There was some spontaneity in him that sort of made you feel alive and cared for. And he was quite strong on what was right and what was proper, what was Islamic and what was not. And, you know, there was no duplicity in him.
सबसे अब्बा का मैंने देखा था कि झूठ से सख्त नफरत थी और वे पहचान भी जाते थे, बहुत जल्दी पहचान लेते थे कि कोई झूठ बोल रहा है.
He was able to read a mind of a person like anything. It was surprising.
Well, he was just a complete man in himself. I think anyone who came into contact with him just thought that he had him for that period of time, as if he was just for, his whole being was just for this one individual. And I think that was his greatest characteristic. He was so complete, that so perfect in many respects. It was his knowledge, it was his sheer enthusiasm, but also that in his personal life he was so complete as well. We mentioned his fondness for sport, his fondness for writing, and again from cooking to photography to hiking to walking to cycling. He just embodied everything that perhaps a perfect man can be, and I think that's the best memory I have of him, and something that we all perhaps can strive to, into how we can balance our lives ultimately to achieve success, and also to balance both the spiritual side and the personal side of one's life.
He spent his life in the service of humanity. The very first scheme of his Khilafat was set up to provide housing for the needy, and on the 21st of February 2003, he launched Maryam Shadi Fund, which was devoted to providing financial help for the marriage of girls in the poorest areas. Just 2 months had passed after the initiation of the Maryam Shadi Fund. On the 19th of April 2003, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV passed away at the age of 74.
मेरे दर्द की जो दवा करे.
Thousands of people came to pay their last respects. His funeral prayer was led by Hadhrat Mirza Tahir Ahmad, the fifth successor to the promised Messiah. His sacred remains were reverently committed to the earth on the 23rd of April at Islamabad, Tilford. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV's leadership was characterized by vibrancy and dynamism that became the hallmark of his 21-year tenure of office. He spread the message of God. He was a fountain of knowledge. He touched the hearts of people. He was loved by young and old. He was a man of dignity, a man of peace. He was a man of God.
हुआ करे वो जो बेपनाह उदास हो मगर हिज्र का न गिला करे मेरे दर्द की जो दवा करे कोई ऐसा शख्स हुआ करे वो जो बेपनाह उदास हो मगर हिज्र का न गिला करे मगर हिज्र का न गिला करे कोई ऐसा शख्स हुआ करे कोई ऐसा शख्स हुआ करे
सल्ले अला नबीना सल्ले अला मुहम्मद